Renegade, and tonight we're going to be reviewing Deathwish. As you can see, I got more light. For the time being, I'm still working on getting some equipment. So, where do you start with Deathwish? In my opinion, there's only 3 good vigilante movies that's ever been made. The rest are okay, but there's really only 3. Those are The Brave One, starring Jodie Foster, Thomas Jane's The Punisher, and Deathwish, starring Charles Bronson. Each one of these films takes a look at the vigilante, and each one of them does it in a different way. Tonight we'll be discussing Deathwish. I do plan on doing The Punisher, and I do plan on doing The Brave One eventually. But for tonight, the Deathwish is what we're going to be discussing. Deathwish to me is one of the more interesting vigilante films that's ever been made. Now, the movie was produced in... Give me 1 second to get my notes. Sorry. The movie was made in 1974, and it was directed by Michael Winner. Starring Charles Bronson, Vincent Gardenia, Hope Lounge, and young Jeff Goldblum. Sorry, I took notes when I was watching the movie. It was produced by Paramount. Now, an interesting thing about this movie is it's actually derived from a novel. I've never read a novel. It sounds like an interesting novel if it's anything like the movie. It's one I'd probably be interested in watching anyway. So what's the point I'm making here? Alright. The movie follows the character Paul Kersey. After a brutal rape of his daughter and a murder of his wife. We see a man that basically is one way. He's completely liberal at the beginning of our movie, or at least is leaning a lot more towards this direction. He's not a violent man by any means. In fact, when he served in, he was a consultant observer in the Korean War in the medical field, and he's not a violent man by his own accounts. But what we see is a man that basically, after these horrific events happen, becomes a extremely violent guy, to the point where he is almost, well, there's no almost to it. He's a hunter. The man is a hunter. And it's really fascinating when you look at it about that. It's interesting character development that the man receives throughout the movie. Being that the movie's less than 100 minutes, it's pretty well done, man. So let me talk about some of the stuff that goes on in this film. If you do want to watch the movie, and I'm going to spoil a lot of things here. If you do want to watch the movie, first off, let me just get this out of the way. It's a good movie. I do recommend it. If you want a score, I'll give you a score right now. 4 out of 5. So if you do want to watch it, you don't want to know about the movie, if you've never seen Deathwish before in your life, please cut the video off now. Okay. From this point on, I'm going to be spoiling the entire movie, because it's just that fascinating to me. Alright, so, let's take a look here. Alright, so, what we have in Deathwish is, we see literally the transformation from this from this very peaceful guy to basically a killer. We see the transformation go through all the changes. throughout the movie, he has this pent-up rage that is very apparent. We first see it come up when he goes and he goes and buys $20 of quarters and puts them in a sock. And then he takes the volition himself, walks outside, and decides to beat the crap out of a person that tries to rob him. This goes along with his philosophy of self-defense, which is brought up with his son-in-law at one point, which I'll get to in a minute. I'm going to stick with this for a minute. So we see that violence is in his nature, but his reaction afterwards is interesting, because the first thing he does, he goes back to the apartment and he's shaken up by what he's done. He didn't kill this man. He pretty much knocked him down, and the man ran away. But the fact that he can inflict harm on somebody shakes him up. Now, to that end, he goes and meets with his. He's given an opportunity to go to Tucson, Arizona, and there he meets a man, and he's going there for. He goes to Tucson, Arizona on a job, basically architectural job. Well, it's not architect exactly. It's building. Architecture is building. What's it called? Scoping out the land for development. I can't remember what the job's called right now. I'm a freaking idiot because I can't remember it. But that's the job that he has. And so he goes out there. He meets this man, and while he's out there, he finds that we the audience find out while he's out there, basically that he can fire a gun, that he knows how to fire a gun, and he's well versed in how to fire a gun, being from his father. Now, here's an interesting thing about his father. Now, this is almost a throwaway line, but it does work into the character if you pay attention very closely. This is how he states his father. His father was a hunter. His father was a hunter. And he said that his mother was on the opposite end of the stick. Now, his father died in a deer hunting accident, was mistaken for a deer. To which he says, my mother won the argument. Or the flip of the coin, pretty much. Why is this statement important to what I'm fixing to say? Is basically this. He pretty much becomes his father in that essence. His father was a hunter. His father hunted animals. He becomes a hunter himself and starts to hunt humans as animals. But at the same time, it isn't the same way that his father did this. Now, granted, you may think that I'm taking a lot out of this. I'm just trying to use the terms of what is really there, okay? I'm trying to use what's there and show you what I'm talking about. His philosophy basically revolves around self-defense. Now, you could argue that this isn't really self-defense because he's putting himself in this situation to begin with. He's the one going out there. He's the one buying the groceries. He's the one walking down the street. He's making himself a victim, is the point I'm making here. He's walking down the street and he's making himself appear every bit as a victim. He has groceries. He has his hands full of them. The criminals at large know that he has money because of that. And because of this, he's a target very easily. He's a very well known target. Very easily to find. But at the same time, he's a hunter. He's made himself appear to be a victim, but the reality is that he is a hunter. Now, this is fascinating to me because most of the time when you see a vigilante movie of some sort, you see the hunter. You see a man that basically goes out, finds things, finds people that are doing something, and basically shoots them. That's not the case in this movie. With the exception of a few ones, and there is one, and I'll bring it up in a second. But he goes out, makes himself the victim, and then becomes a hunter afterwards. Now that's just a fascinating concept to me. Now for the other one, now there is one thing on here that I have to mention though. The second time we see him, well technically the third time we see him perform an act of vigilantism, a man is being beaten. It's by 3 men. He's being beaten. And we see him perform this act of vigilantism. Now, this is an important thing to get my note in. Yes, he helps the guy. He distracts the man long enough that they quit beating him. But he doesn't attack them until they start to come at him. He makes them come to him. He makes himself appear as the victim to entice the men to come to him instead. Because the person they're beating down is worth less than what he is possibly worth. If that makes... That's the best way I can put it. Therefore, he's using psychology to basically lure these people into the false security. Well, it's not really false security, but basically the false sense that I'm an easy target. Now I know I'm really beating the hell out of this point, but that's really this is really the biggest fascination for the movie of me, is the fact that you have a vigilante, a man who wants to take the law into his own hands. Yet the way he does it is to create a scenario to where it is self-defense in his viewpoint. That's a really fascinating way of looking at vigilantism. Now you have his son's counteracting point, or sorry, his son-in-law's counteracting point. Basically, what he says is, let's see. Okay, basically, this comes to another point here: statistics on police law. His son basically says, his son-in-law basically says, all we are is sorry, I cannot talk tonight. His son-in-law basically says that we are all statistics on police law. That's all we are. And to which he asks, well, what should we do then? He's like, well, we should cut and run. That's what a civilized man would do. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's basically what he says. To which Paul says, to which Charles Bronson's character Paul comments, whatever happened to the old American fashion of self-defense? Why should we cut and run? This is our homes. This is where we live. Why should we cut and run? There is absolutely no reason. And to a degree, you have to agree with him. There isn't any reason why you should cut and run. See, the thing about it is, you can tell through the whole movie that Paul is terrified, that he is angry. There is a boiling rage behind him, that he is sorrowful, that he's a lot of sorrow in him from the loss of his wife, from the rape of his daughter that's made her basically catatonic, and eventually he's committed. But the point of the matter is, you can't run. You have to stand your ground. And that's what he's getting at. And that brings us to the end of the movie, basically. We have the cop, Frank Ocho? I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Ocho or Ochan or something like that. Who also has his own philosophy on the whole matter. He believes in law and order, and doesn't believe in vigilantism. However, at the same time, he's willing to compromise his ethics. Well, not his ethics per se. He's willing to compromise the point that he is, God, he's willing to compromise the points that he has. He's willing to compromise the point that he is doing law enforcement, and while he condones vigilantism, he does understand it. He's told by the people that work above him, the DA and his chief of police, that they don't want this vigilante. They don't want him. Why don't they want him? Well, he's bringing mugging crimes down to a certain point. If they bring the man in, he becomes a martyr. And like the film says itself, then we have vigilantes popping up left and right and shooting anybody that looks like a criminal. And it's a good point to make. So you have Frank, and he has to compromise the fact that he believes in law and order. And so we get to the last scene where it basically tells him get out of town, and it makes a lot of sense. That's one of the things I like about this movie is no scene in the movie is shot without having a purpose. None. The opening scene, we see that Paul is a loving husband, and he and his wife have a very close relationship. We see the setup of the three. We see the setup of the three hoodlums that will murder Paul's wife and rape his daughter. And we find out how they know where they are in the second scene, and it's paid off in the third scene. Point I'm making is that this entire movie's like that. No strings are hanging. Not really. Even the point of his daughter being catatonic is there to drive the point home. And the point is basically, you have to stand your ground, no matter what. No matter what's going on, you have to stand your ground. Now, that's what the movie's conveying across. It's got a lot of social satire. When the movie came, not satire, it was a lot of social commentary. When the movie came out, street crime was pretty high at the time. And it would remain high through the 80s as well. You know, we had other movies in this range that came out during that time. We had Dirty Harry. We had, actually we had a lot of Dirty Harry movies. We had John Wayne. He put out one, Q, I think is what it's called. We had the Bounty Hunter movie starring Steve McQueen. Just a lot of movies that dealt with kind of loose cannons and things of that sort. But we didn't really have anyone that dealt with a vigilante. And this is the movie that really shot Charles Bronson into the spotlight. Prior to this, he was well known for basically being in another fantastic movie, which is, oh my god, I forgot it. Sorry, hang on just one second. The Great Escape. He was known for being in The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven, and that's pretty much it. This is the movie that really shot him up. Unfortunately, this is also the movie where he gained a reputation as the vigilante. Many movies after this, he would be playing the role of a vigilante in some shape, form, or fashion. And in my opinion, Death Wish is the only good Death Wish out of the bunch. The rest of them are, some of them are okay, some of them are fine, or some of them are terrible. But Death Wish is probably the best movie out of the entire five. I think it's 5 movies they had, maybe 4. Maybe it's 4 movies. But it's the best one out of the bunch, and it's the one that I'll sit there and watch. So, the point of the matter is that this is a good movie. Like I said earlier, I gave you a review earlier. I said a 4 out of 5. And the Renegade does recommend this. Now, if you get a chance, you should definitely watch it. Now, coming here in the next couple of days, I am going to finish the review, and I will be putting out a review for Batman: Assault on Arkham. as well as another review on Bioshock Infinite, which I'm dreading, because I do have a lot to say about that game. But I do dread it, and I'm writing a review as we speak right now. Just trying to get notes in my head. Some of these reviews I do just strictly off the wall. Other ones I want to get all my thoughts together before I talk. This was one I did want to get all my thoughts together before I really started speaking about it. So anyway, this is Renegade, and I do wish y'all a good evening, and y'all take it easy, and I'll catch you later.